everybody? This is Zach Allen. This is episode number 7 of the Speed for Your Mind podcast. Today on the show, I have Caleb Grummett. He's the head strength and conditioning coach at Olivet College, actually back in my old stomping grounds, around the Lansing area in Michigan. He works with every single team on campus, so I didn't want to, coach is going to be able to give you a very, very unique, very, very, different approach to how he does things and how he goes about his daily business. So, Coach, can you give me just a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure thing. Number one, thanks for having me, Zach. I really appreciate the time and be able to get to offer my experience at this at the school here. Again, like we said, I work at Olivet College, Division III school, where we work with every program. Kind of my story, after I was out of high school, went to Lowell High School, ended up going to the military, serving the Marine Corps from 2000 to 2004, making sure that I was a mortarman, 0341, and after I was out of service, I then began to work, start a family, and do all those things. Kind of felt that there was something more inside, so I turned to fighting MMA, started fighting MMA, turned professional in about 2010, and I did MMA and professional boxing for quite a while, which brought me to Olivet working with the wrestlers. In 2013, I started assistant coaching for the wrestling team, finished up my degree in exercise science, and then I became the strength coach here at Olivet for kind of my backdrop into strength conditioning.
Very cool. So, and like I said, like we talked about when we were kind of opening up here, and we both have very similar experiences in terms of being at that Division III level and having to deal with the daily rigors of things that like I'll be honest that I don't have to any longer deal with because of different situations at different schools. Can you tell all the people that are watching, and I think this is really important because a lot of times I think that some coaches, they look away, and then you and I have talked about this, and this and that. But I think that the best coaches, have experiences across all levels, and have started here, have started there. And can you tell the viewers just a little bit about what you do on a daily basis and how many athletes you work with and some of the things that you have to work around being where you're at?
Okay, yeah. So for normal start of my day, we get in early, about 5 o'clock, and I recently started an internship program because I don't have an assistant coach. So dealing with 14 sport programs on campus, we see roughly 700 to 900 students weekly as far as what we'll see within a program. And we have to, as far as like needs analysis, we have to almost create that for each team. Because the sport coaches that we work for do not understand the implementations of the designs for strength conditioning. So that comes down onto me, how I see that fit, where I need to put them, how do I want to put their design in there, what adaptions I'm trying to get them in, when I need to get that in by. Because, again, we only see them for 15 weeks in the first semester and probably 6 of the second because we give them the off times in between the summer. We don't have the control of those, so we really have to design our programs to make fit that we don't always have them in our constant care that we would like to have them in. And with our weight room, again, we have resources that are not what you would normally see at a Division I school because you don't have the class block schedules where they can come in. I'm actually down from the time students are in class from 9 a.m. to about 3 p.m. So that's a large block of time where we don't have students. We're filling in a 2,500 square foot room, a large majority of kids at a time, multiple programs where we have to be on top of making sure form is being done, making sure work to rest ratios are being followed, making sure that they're following through the core lifts into the assistant lifts at the right amount of time in order to get the next group in. And understanding physiological changes are key, because we've got the number one thing that they say at our school is it's a student first, athlete second. The student athlete where they're coming here to play a sport, but number one, to get that education. We know that when midterms hit, there's a lot of things on our students at that time where their CNSs are brought down. So we have to understand when that CNS, central nervous system, is brought down, how are we going to adjust our volume? How are we going to adjust our intensity in order to allow them to grow and recover, getting stronger even when those extra stresses are brought in? So like I said, we're in here early in the morning getting things set up. We're putting all of our programs on the board, making sure that each need for the athletes are being met. So when they come in, we have to ask how they're doing, how they're feeling. So if we need to implement variables of training, that's being done. And a lot of it's on the fly because we're not getting the direct connection with the coach. We'll see them later, but if we're running at 5 o'clock in the morning, we don't see anybody in the halls till about 10 o'clock, when the coaches start rolling into the halls. So we have to be able to implement on the fly and adjust on the fly and make sure that these athletes are growing from the pressure signals that we're putting into them. It's balls to the wall, like I said, from those early scoring sessions from 6 a.m. to about 9, and then again we go from 3 to 6. So roughly 14 hours of my day, I'm here getting athletes to flow through our system of our weight system.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people don't understand exactly how that flow works. So I mean, like for example, when I used to train, we had that same exact block. You have that block from 10 until 3 or so, and then you're working from 5 to 9 in the morning, trying to train as many teams as you can, and then you work from 3 to 7 at night, trying to train as many teams as you can, and go like yourself, you go teach a couple classes throughout the day. And you fill your day with the stuff like that. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you maneuver your teams to be able to move them through the weight room fluently, and make sure that they understand exactly what they're doing and what time they're in, and maybe what time they have to come in and warm up while you're working with another team. Just to kind of cover exactly how you do that.
Right. So, like when we look at splits, I've got to really consider the athlete. I have to really consider their training age. We'll get collegiate basketball players in that have never been trained on any of the exercises. So again, when we're looking at training age 1, how am I going to implement that? How as far as how many days are necessary for that athlete? Because if I put them under 3-4 days, that's going to be an overwhelming amount of pressure on their system. So I initially make the split off kind of that setup. How many are more experienced lifters? So we know football is more experienced. They usually get the 3-day block in their off season. Right now in season, we're seeing 2 days for our varsity and roughly 4 days for our JV. So I set them up the larger number of groups because we get about 200 football players. And that number is kind of outrageous for a lot of other schools, but that's what we usually see for our numbers for that sport. So again, I got to get them the largest amount of block, which is again 3 to 5 throughout the week, set for our football players to run in. And I roughly do about 45 at a time. So we'll do offense first, defense second. We always start with the main core lifts. We make sure that whatever we're trying to implement that day, they follow through, and everything has to be followed according to the schematics, or else it can really throw things off and cut down on that work to rest ratio. Then we put them into the assistants, where I usually have my interns helping with the assistant exercise or the secondary balance activators, right. And but we've got to make sure that we're following that work to rest. And as soon as they get done, we clean them up with cool them down with some mobility work, maybe a jog, and then as soon as that team's heading out, a new team's heading in. It's almost like a wagon wheel where it's the same setup. We get them warmed up, we get their core done, we get them in the weight room, we explain the list, we explain what we're trying to implement with those exercises. We get them set up, we get them psyched up because we want their ideal performance state locked in, and not have them think about all these different things because we need to keep them motivated through that entire lift. And like I said, we'll see, like Monday we saw 4 teams between the time 6 a.m. to roughly 9 a.m. So, it was just one after another. We'd sometimes train 2 side by side at the same time. So
Yeah. No, I think so. So when you break down your teams, and so you break down your programming, right? And I had a coach named Jim Kramer, who's the head strength coach at North Dakota State University. He told me when I got the Moravian job, he said to me, he just keep it frickin' simple, and because you're going to have so many kids, working in and out of the weight room. So what do you do? I can tell you that I didn't follow his advice to the T, right? Because obviously you want to be specific in some areas and not so in others. But I really tried my best to follow his advice and move kids in, move kids out, and be efficient in what we were doing. So can you talk about how you program for such a wide range of student athletes?
Okay, yeah. What I do, and I believe that at our level, I'm a big fan of the undulating system. So what I do is I alternate the rep schemes throughout the week, and I can actually do, and I adjust the intensity and volume. So there's some days where I'm going to drop that volume and allow them to have less time in the weight room. Or the other days in an off season, I'm going to increase that volume. Now, when I look at exercises and looking for what I want to implement, I still need to make sure that they're doing those main core exercises. So again, yes, we're trying to keep things basic. We're not trying to have, I've worked with some programs where they'll do a core, they'll then go to the side and they'll do a core activation. They'll stay squat and then they'll do a core activation. They'll come and do bench or do, and they're kind of going back and forth. I can't have that, especially with the size of my weight room. Again, 2,500 square foot. I try to keep them right on the exercise platforms as we move through those exercises. And again, they may see 2 sets of 6 during a season lift, and in an off-season lift they might see 4 sets of 5. Increasing that. But each exercise takes roughly the same amount of time, and I can complete each workout within an hour. And that just comes down with adjusting the volume, adjusting the intensity, and making sure that there's that good constant flow to get them through that. So again, I'm keeping a lot of the movements basic. I always focus on a full body training. I'm a big fan of the full body training system, making sure that we get the hip hinging, squat, push, pull, and the secondary lifts. Make sure that they're being activated regularly. And again, I put the schedule in there to make sure that they get the adequate amount of time off. I do always suggest to make sure that when they're, say if they get a Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, that they're doing active recovery, that they're doing jogging, that they're doing mobility outside of the weight room. So again, it takes just a constant reiterating yourself and what's important, how to take care of your body. We call it the championship behavior. Are you hydrating? We got to keep track of that. We don't have a nutritionalist. Are you eating enough macronutrients, protein, fats and carbs to make sure that your energy systems are replenishing? Because we get a lot of times where they're not hydrated, which again can cause all kinds of issues where cramping or breakdown and things like that. So again, we have to be that number one resource in keeping our athletes healthy and ready to keep growing. But
yeah, no, I think a lot of people don't, they don't understand how that program and process works, and then how many kind of details the coach like yourself has to put into everything that you're doing on a regular basis. So, last question for you. We always try and keep these under 20 minutes because I know people's time is valuable, right? So,
right.
Can you tell me, a piece of advice, for someone that is in your situation? If I look back at a 22-year-old me, I would have loved to have a piece of advice from somebody in your shoes that is, going and taking over their first program, or going to start coaching their first couple of teams. Can you give me a little piece of advice and for someone that's going to be in a position that you're in relatively soon?
Yep. Now, for my interns, I always start. I want you to find your voice. You need to have a voice in this field, this profession. Without a voice, you can't get the athlete to relate to you, and you have to understand what you're talking about to build that trust. And on top of that voice, you have to have a vision. to understand what kind of culture you're trying to implement to a system that's been kind of built on this level of mediocrity, because we're here to change and help people grow. So if they're thinking, hey, I'm not good enough to do this, or hey, I'm not strong enough to do this, we have to have that vision, which gives us the passion to drive forward. And I always talk about, it's not about our relevance as coaches, about trainers, it's about their athletes or their relevance as the athletes. And so we always put them first. Having that voice, having your vision, and being able to serve them is going to build that trust, that relationship that you can get, and you can mold them. Without that, all is lost.
Right. That's a great piece of advice, man. Great piece of advice. So, Coach, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. If you have not followed Coach, he's on social media, on Facebook. He relatively often puts content out and puts great stuff out on a regular basis. So if you have not followed him, follow him. Again, Coach, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.